Yesterday, I read a horrible story. It was a story about a man who pretended that he worked at his department store, and a young girl was going into the dressing room, so he said, you can go into this dressing room. And the reason he did that is because he could access that dressing room with his phone from above the dressing room. So I guess the dressing room was accessible outside, and there was no ceiling. And he put his phone down while she was undressing, and she actually found him, and he was arrested. So that's depressing enough that a man would do that. I think the man was 55, and she was a young girl. Well, young meaning in her 20s. But the real depressing thing was that it was found out that this man was a leader in the Mormon religion. He was a leader of his church. And so when I read the story, aside from just being depressed and discouraged that this is going on, it reminded me of the fact of how deeply rooted our conditioning is, that even someone in such a position would give in to this kind of thing. This is really low. And then I was reflecting on how Prabhupada would often say, if we don't stay in Krishna consciousness, again, we'll just become rascals. And a few days ago, we were talking about the effects of the modes of nature, and how when we start playing with the modes of nature, like rajas and gunas, then within those modes, they trigger certain conditioned responses. And of course, the sexual response is very deeply rooted. And so it means that this man has some sexual addiction, and he was never able to overcome it in the church. And it's a fact that some people, even though they practice religion, and of course you might say, but he's not a devotee, but this does affect devotees also. They practice religion, but they don't do it well, or maybe they do it well, but not well enough to help them overcome their lust or their attachment to lust. And so because lust goes very deep, that still, if they're practicing religion and they don't unearth that deeply rooted lust, then it comes up, even though he's 55 and he's doing something like this. So I just saw this as a reminder, perhaps as a warning to all of us, to understand how deeply rooted our material desires are. Now you might say, but I would never do that. Then I would say, okay, I can accept that. Would you ever think of doing that? Because a lot of the problem with lust is not that we do it, but we think about doing it. And thinking about doing it, you might say, well, but I don't do it. But if that's what you're thinking about doing, pretty much it's the same addiction. It's just you don't play it out, but you're still addicted to dreaming or enjoying something that you shouldn't be dreaming about or enjoying. So this is a reminder to all of us of all the statements that Prabhupada has made about how important sadhana is, how important it is to chant properly, how important it is to associate, how important it is to hear Bhagavatam. Because this nature, it's there. Now, some of you may say, but I'm not that kind of person. I don't have that nature. So I'll say, okay, I can see that. I can agree with that. I can accept that. But then I would ask you, but what is that thing that is your challenge? Maybe it's not something gross. Maybe it's more subtle, but it's still a strong material attachment that is impeding your Krishna consciousness in some way. So what is it? What is that thing that's still there, whether it's lust in a different form or greed in a different form or the need to be recognized? What is that thing that for this man it was seeing pictures of young girls without clothes? What is your equivalent to that? What is it that's still there that you still meditate on, that if you become weak in Krishna consciousness, it just comes out? Like I'll give you an example, that for about the last 35 years, I've had problems with, not serious problems, but I've had problems with my left leg and hip. and it's a little weak. It doesn't handicap me, as most of you know. I go on walks every day, and I can walk fast and so forth. So it hasn't really handicapped me. But I always notice that when my body's weak, my hip hurts because it's the weak spot in my body. So that's the first place that it hurts. So when I'm strong, it actually doesn't hurt. I don't notice that it's weak. But if my body becomes weak, I notice my leg is really weak. So using this as an analogy, what is your weak spot? What is it that you're still attached to that still gets in the way, that still comes up whenever you're weak, that in some way is keeping you distant from being purely Krishna conscious? And it's different for all of us. And because I counsel many devotees, I see this in lots of devotees, that they have something, and they often don't even realize how deeply rooted it is, or they may realize how deeply rooted it is, but they don't realize how damaging it is. They don't see the ramifications of it. It's easier for me to see it. It's easier to be objective for me. So what is that thing that you feel is it's your lust or greed or whatever it is in a different form? Maybe it's just anger. Maybe it's just the desire for something that isn't so Krishna conscious, that's not good for your Krishna consciousness. So you have to think like that. And so we can use the example of this man and then allow us to see what is the equivalent of his fall down for us that is harming our Krishna consciousness or preventing us from being more Krishna conscious. Hare Krishna. A lot of what I'm sharing in my daily videos are realizations that have taken me practically my whole life in Krishna consciousness to come to. And the reason I share them is because I made so many mistakes in my life as a devotee. There were so many things I didn't understand, and worse, there were so many things I misunderstood. And I want to help devotees so you don't have to go through that. You know, I've almost been a devotee 50 years. And I can share that experience with you so you don't have to make the same mistakes that I made. You can come to realizations that took me my whole life to come to, you can come to now. That's the purpose of these daily videos. And I think that it can help many, many devotees. So I just ask you, if you agree with me, if you think these are helpful, please like, share, get the message out, because I'm doing this because I feel it's a valuable service, and the more people that see these videos, the more I will be inspired to continue and inspired to speak in a way that will be inspiring.